Dad, what the hell did you do?
I spent New Year's Eve alone because my wife called me difficult. But when my phone rang at midnight, I discovered the whole world had been looking for me. The clock hit 12:01 a.m. and my phone exploded with light. Not Clara. My son Evan. His voice cracked like he'd been running. Dad, what the hell did you do? He wasn't angry. He was sobbing. My phone won't stop. People everywhere are asking about you. They're saying you built something that's changing everything. Why didn't you tell us? I sat in my study, alone, while fireworks painted the sky outside. The house felt like a tomb. Just hours ago, Clara stood in our kitchen folding napkins for a party I wasn't invited to. She used that word carefully like she'd practiced it. Difficult. She said the kids felt tense around me. That I asked too many questions. That celebration should feel light and I made everything heavy. I didn't argue because arguing would prove her point. Now Evan's crying on the phone and I don't understand why. Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family, enjoy the story. Dad, are you listening? Evan's voice pulled me back. There are articles. Headlines. They're calling you a genius. Some big tech company bought your security system. Everyone's talking about it. My throat went dry. The system. The one I'd been building alone for over a year in the hours before dawn when no one was awake to notice. The one I never mentioned because no one ever asked what I was working on. How much did they pay you? Evan whispered. I closed my eyes. Not because I was proud. Because the question hurt more than anything Clara said earlier. After a year of invisible work, the first thing my son wanted to know was the price tag. Evan, I said quietly, when's the last time you asked me what I was thinking about? Silence. Then his voice came back, smaller. Dad, I'm sorry. We're all sorry. We didn't know. But that was the problem, wasn't it? They didn't know because they stopped caring to know. And now the world knew before they did. Where's your mother? I asked. She saw the news. She's coming home now. I looked at the empty room around me. At the chair where I'd sat every morning in the dark, building something that mattered while my family decided I didn't. The fireworks outside were dying down. 2026 had arrived. And apparently so had my relevance. But I wasn't sure I wanted them back now. Have you ever been invisible in your own home? Drop a comment and let me know. And if you're new here, hit that subscribe button because this story is just getting started. 6 hours earlier, the kitchen smelled like cinnamon rolls and betrayal. Clara stood at the counter, folding cloth napkins into perfect triangles. She did that when she was nervous. Fold, smooth, fold again. She wouldn't look at me. The kids and I talked, she said. Her voice was soft, which somehow made it worse. We think it might be better if you stay home tonight. I was pouring coffee. My hand stopped midair. Stay home. From the lake house. From the New Year's thing. She finally glanced up and I saw it in her eyes. This wasn't a discussion. It was a verdict. You've been so critical lately. Always correcting people. Always questioning things. It makes everyone tense. Critical. Questioning. These were crimes now. I ask questions because I care. I said. I know. She folded another napkin. But it doesn't feel that way anymore. Feels heavy. Like we're all walking on eggshells. I set the coffee pot down. My hand was shaking. So you're uninviting me from New Year's? We're not uninviting you. We think maybe some space would be good. For everyone. Space. That clean, kind word people use when they mean distance. When they mean we don't want you there. I wanted to fight. To list every time I'd been there for them, every moment I'd shown up, every sacrifice I'd made. But I knew how that would sound. Defensive. Difficult. So I nodded. Okay. Clara looked surprised. Maybe disappointed. Like she'd expected a fight and my surrender proved her point even more. I'll call you at midnight, she said. Sure. She left 2 hours later. Kissed my cheek like we were strangers being polite. The kids didn't even come inside to say goodbye. Through the window, I watched them load the car, laughing about something I wasn't part of. And then I was alone. But what they didn't know, what none of them knew, was that for the past year I'd been waking up at 4 a.m. every single day. While they slept, I was working. The first time I wrote code at 4 in the morning, it was because I couldn't sleep. This was 14 months ago, back when I still believed I mattered here. I'd suggested a security upgrade for Clara's online store at dinner. Simple stuff. Two-factor authentication. Basic encryption. Our daughter rolled her eyes. Dad, we already have IT people for that. IT people. Like I hadn't spent 30 years in digital infrastructure before retiring. I went to bed that night feeling hollow. Not angry. Worse. Irrelevant. So I got up before dawn and started building something just to prove I still could. It started small. A better firewall design. Then a smarter authentication system. Then I got obsessed. I started reading about mesh networks and quantum-resistant encryption. I built protocols that could predict breach attempts before they happened. I created something that learned and adapted in real time. Every morning, 4 a.m. While my family slept in the rooms above me, I worked in the basement in the dark. I didn't tell anyone because no one was asking. Not once in 14 months did Clara come down and say, "What are you working on?" Not once did the kids wonder why I was tired. They just assumed I was getting old. Slowing down. Becoming difficult. But I wasn't slowing down. I was building something revolutionary in complete silence. 3 months ago, I submitted it to a developer forum under a fake name. Just wanted feedback. Within a week, I had 17 companies reaching out. By December, I was in acquisition talks with one of the biggest tech firms in the country. I didn't tell my family because I wanted to surprise them. I wanted to wait until it was real, until I had proof that I still mattered. I signed the papers on December 28th. The announcement was scheduled for New Year's Eve at midnight. The same night my wife decided I was too difficult to celebrate with. The same night I sat alone while the world learned my name. And now they were coming home. The phone didn't stop ringing after Evan hung up. My notifications were exploding. Texts, emails, calls from numbers I didn't recognize. I sat there staring at the screen, watching my life change in real time while still sitting in the same chair where I'd been forgotten. A text from my daughter, "Dad, what? Call me." Another from my son-in-law, "Just saw the news. Holy shit. Congratulations. Congratulations." Like I'd won a raffle instead of spent a year proving I wasn't obsolete. I opened Twitter. My name was trending. Actual trending. Analysts were breaking down my security architecture. Tech journalists were calling it the most significant advancement in digital protection in a decade. Someone had found an old photo of me from a conference in 2003 and it was being shared everywhere with captions like, "The Silent Genius," and "He did it in his basement." I wasn't in a basement. I was in a study. But facts didn't matter now. The story was already being written without me. My phone buzzed again. Claire. I stared at her name on the screen. Let it ring once, twice, 3 times. Then I answered, "Daniel." Her voice was breathless. "I just saw. Everyone's talking about it. Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you ask?" I wanted to say, but I didn't. "It wasn't final until recently," I said instead. "But a year? You worked on this for a year and never mentioned it?" There it was. The slight accusation in her voice. Like I'd committed some betrayal by having a life she wasn't monitoring. "You called me difficult this afternoon," I said quietly. "You uninvited me from New Year's because I asked too many questions. What exactly was I supposed to tell you?" Silence on her end. Long and uncomfortable. "I'm coming home," she finally said. I figured. "We need to talk about this." "Yeah," I said. "We do." I hung up before she could say anything else. My hands were shaking. Not from anger. From something deeper. From the weight of being visible again only because the world said I mattered. Through the window I could see cars pulling into driveways. Families coming home from parties. Hugging. Laughing. Living in a world where they hadn't spent New Year's Eve being validated by strangers because their own family forgot them. Headlights turned onto our street. Clara was 3 hours away, but I knew she was driving fast. And I knew that when she walked through that door, she'd look at me differently. Not because I'd changed, but because everyone else had confirmed what she'd stopped believing. That I was worth listening to. But would that be enough? I spent the next 2 hours reading articles about myself written by people who'd never met me. Visionary. Revolutionary. The engineer who saw what others missed. They were describing a stranger. Some mythical version of me that existed in press releases and LinkedIn updates. Not the man who got called difficult for caring too much. Not the husband who got uninvited from his own family's celebration. One article interviewed a former colleague. "Daniel always saw 3 steps ahead," she said. "He was brilliant but humble. Never needed the spotlight." I laughed out loud at that. Not because it wasn't true, but because humble sounded noble until you realized it just meant nobody noticed. My phone buzzed. A text from Evan. "We're all coming over tomorrow. Need to talk to you." All of them. A family meeting now that I was newsworthy. I thought about all the dinners where I tried to share ideas. Where I'd start explaining something I was excited about and watch their eyes glaze over. Where Clara would change the subject or the kids would check their phones. Last Thanksgiving, I'd mentioned I was working on something interesting. My daughter literally said, "That's nice, Dad," in that voice you use with children when you're not really listening. "That's nice, Dad." For words that told me everything I needed to know about how much my thoughts mattered. So I stopped sharing. Stopped trying to be included in conversations that didn't want me. Stopped pretending that being part of this family meant they actually valued what I had to contribute. And they called that difficult. Another text. "Clara, 20 minutes away." I looked around the study. At the empty coffee cup from this afternoon. At the chair where I'd spent 1,000 silent mornings building something none of them knew existed. At the life I'd lived in the margins of their awareness. The thing about being invisible is that you get used to it. You build entire worlds in the spaces people aren't looking. You learn to find meaning in work instead of recognition. You convince yourself that matching to yourself is enough. Until suddenly the whole world is watching, and the people who should have seen you first are scrambling to catch up. I heard a car door slam outside. Clara was home. And I had no idea what I was going to say to her, because the truth felt too big and too sharp to fit into words that wouldn't cut us both. But one thing I knew for certain, I wasn't going to apologize for being worth more than they believed. Are you hooked yet? If you're feeling this story, smash that like button and hit subscribe. Trust me, you don't want to miss what happens when Clara walks through that door. And drop a comment. Are you Team Daniel, or do you think he should have said something sooner? Let's talk about it. Clara's key turned in the lock at 3:47 a.m., and I realized I'd been holding my breath for hours. I didn't move from the study. Didn't get up to meet her at the door. I just sat there listening to her footsteps cross the hardwood floor, hesitate in the hallway, then come toward me. She appeared in the doorway still wearing her party dress. Mascara smudged under her eyes. She'd been crying. "Daniel," she whispered. I looked at her. Really looked. And I saw something I hadn't seen in years. Fear. She was afraid of me now. Not because I'd done anything wrong, but because she'd gotten me wrong. "The kids keep calling," she said. "They're all freaking out." Evan showed them the articles. The acquisition amount. "It's everywhere." "I know. Why didn't you tell us?" Her voice cracked. "A year, Daniel. You worked on this alone for a year. You called me difficult today," I said calmly. "You uninvited me from New Year's because I make everyone tense. What part of that conversation made you think I should share what I was working on?" She flinched. "That's not fair." "Isn't it?" My phone kept buzzing on the desk. Emails. Messages. Interview requests. The CEO of the acquiring company wanted to schedule a call. A tech podcast wanted me as a guest. Stanford was asking if I'd speak to their engineering students. The world wanted me. My family was just catching up. Clara moved closer, wrapped her arms around herself. "I was wrong. We were wrong. I see that now." "You see it now," I repeated. "Because CNN confirmed it." "That's not..." She stopped. Started again. "Okay, maybe. But Daniel, you have to understand. You've been so quiet lately. So distant. We thought you were just settling into retirement. We didn't know you were building something like this. You didn't ask." 3 words. That's all it took. 3 words and she started crying for real. I wanted to feel victorious. To feel validated. But watching your wife cry because she finally sees you isn't victory. It's just sad. "I'm sorry," she sobbed. "I'm so sorry." But sorry doesn't erase a year of invisibility. Sorry doesn't rewind all those dinners where I was talked over. Sorry doesn't give me back the mornings I woke up alone, building something that mattered because nothing else in my life did. Then her phone rang. Then mine. Then hers again. The world wasn't going to let us have this moment privately. Everyone wanted a piece of the story. Everyone wanted to know about the genius who'd been hiding in plain sight. Except I wasn't hiding. I was just forgotten. Clara wiped her eyes, looked at her phone. "It's Evan again. And your daughter. And my sister. Everyone wants to know what's happening." "Tell them I'm thinking," I said. "Thinking about what?" "About who deserves to be part of what comes next." Her face went pale. And I knew she finally understood. This wasn't just about an apology. This was about whether I was going to let them back into a life they decided I was too difficult for. Clara sat down across from me without asking. Her hands shook as she placed her phone face down on the desk. "What does that mean?" she asked quietly. "Who deserves to be part of what comes next?" I leaned back in my chair. The same chair where I'd sat invisible for a year. "It means I spent 14 months waking up at 4 a.m. to build something revolutionary while my family slept. It means I did it alone because none of you thought to ask what I was thinking about. It means that tonight, when you had a choice between including me or calling me difficult, you chose difficult. We didn't know. That's the point, Clara. You didn't know because you stopped caring to know. She opened her mouth, closed it, tears running down her face now, smudging what was left of her makeup. You're right, she finally said. You're completely right. I stopped listening. I stopped seeing you as someone who had things to say. I started seeing you as retired, as done, as someone we had to manage instead of learn from. The honesty hurt more than the lies would have. When did it happen? I asked. When did I stop being your partner and start being your burden? She thought about it, really thought. Maybe 2 years ago, when you retired. You seemed so content to just be home, garden, read. I thought you were happy to slow down. I was content, I said, until I realized content meant invisible. My phone buzzed again. Another headline: Tech genius emerges from retirement with game-changing security system. The photo they used was from my company ID badge. I looked tired in it. I built this because I needed to prove something, I admitted. Not to the world, to myself. That my mind still worked, that I still had value. That retirement didn't mean irrelevant. You were never irrelevant, Clara whispered. Then why did you stop listening when I spoke? Silence. The kind that admits guilt without words. I don't know if I can forgive this yet, I said. Not cruel. Just honest. I don't know if sorry is enough when the damage is this deep. Clara nodded, tears falling onto her dress. What do you need from me? Time, I said. And space. And for once, I need you to listen when I tell you what I'm thinking instead of deciding for me what I should feel. Okay, she said. Okay. She stood up slowly like her legs might give out. Walked to the door. Stopped. For what it's worth, she said without turning around, I'm proud of you. I should have said that first. She left me alone in the study again. But this time the loneliness felt different. Not like abandonment. Like choice. Because for the first time in years I was deciding what happened next. And I wasn't sure my family made the cut. My phone rang at 6 a.m. Evan. I let it go to voicemail. He called again at 7. Then my daughter. Then my son-in-law. By 9 there were 12 missed calls and 1 text from Evan. We're all coming over. Need to talk. This is important. I made coffee and waited. They showed up at 10. All of them. Evan and his wife. My daughter and her husband. Even my youngest son who lived 2 states away and never visited. They stood in my living room like strangers at a wake. Evan spoke first. Dad, we read everything. Every article. Every interview with your former colleagues. Every breakdown of what you built. He paused. We had no idea. I know. And we're sorry, my daughter added. Her voice small. We should have asked. We should have paid attention. I sat in my chair. They all stood. That felt right somehow. Do you know what hurt the most? I asked. It wasn't that you didn't care about my work. It was that you decided I didn't have work worth caring about. You wrote me off as retired, therefore done. Like my value expired with my last paycheck. My youngest son, Quinn, looked at the floor. I told people my dad used to be in tech. Used to be. Like you died when you left your job. That's how you all treated me, I said. Like a memory instead of a person. Evan's wife, Rachel, wiped her eyes. We saw the comments online. People saying you're a genius. That you've been ahead of the industry for decades. And we realized we never asked you for advice. About anything. Not careers. Not tech. Nothing. Last year I tried to help you with your startup. I told Evan. You said you had advisors for that. He nodded, crying now. I remember. I thought you were just being a dad. Trying to stay involved. I didn't take you seriously. None of you did. My daughter stepped forward. How do we fix this? I looked at all of them. These people I'd raised. Who I'd sacrificed for. Who I'd loved so completely that I'd accepted invisibility rather than make them uncomfortable with my presence. You start by understanding something, I said. My value didn't appear last night when the world validated it. I was always this person. I was always worth listening to. You just stopped believing it. We know that now, Evan said. Do you? I asked. Or do you just know it because Forbes said so? The question hung there, sharp and uncomfortable. That's what I need to figure out, I continued. Whether you're here because you see me differently or because everyone else does. Whether you actually value me or just my suddenly impressive resume. Quinn spoke up, his voice shaking. That's fair. That's completely fair. And I don't know if I can prove it's not about the money or the fame or whatever. But Dad, I want the chance to try. I looked at Clara standing in the doorway. At my children finally seeing me. At the family I'd almost lost because they forgot I existed. Here's what happens now, I said. I'm going to live my life, build my next project, make my own choices. And you're all welcome to be part of it, but not on the old terms. Not where I'm furniture you talk around. Not where I'm too difficult for asking questions. Not where my worth depends on whether I'm convenient. They nodded. All of them. And if you can't handle that, I finished, then we need to have a different conversation about what this family actually is. Nobody spoke, but something shifted in the room. Something that felt like the beginning of respect. Or maybe the end of taking me for granted. The next 3 weeks were strange. My family tiptoed around me like I was made of glass. Claire asked my opinion on everything. The kids called to actually talk, not just to update me on their lives. Evan invited me to consult on his startup for real this time. It should have felt good. It should have felt like victory. Instead it felt like audition. Like they were performing, caring to prove they'd changed. I went to coffee with Evan on a Tuesday. He brought a notebook. Asked about encryption protocols and market positioning. Took notes on everything I said like I was a professor and he was cramming for finals. Halfway through I stopped talking. What? He asked. Are you actually interested in this or are you trying to prove something? He set his pen down. Can't it be both? No, I said. Either you value my perspective or you're checking a box to make yourself feel better about ignoring me for 2 years. His face reddened. That's harsh. It's honest. We sat in silence. Other people's conversations filled the space between us. I want to value it, he finally said. I want to be someone who listens to you. But I don't know how to prove that when everything I do feels like I'm making up for lost time. Then stop trying to prove it, I said. Just do it. Ask me things because you're curious, not because you feel guilty. Include me because you want to, not because the world told you I'm worth including. He nodded slowly. That's going to take time. I know. And you might not want to wait for me to figure it out. I know that too. He looked at me with something like fear. Are you leaving? I don't know yet, I said honestly. I'm figuring out what I want my life to look like now that I'm not trying to fit into yours. That night, Clara found me in the study. I was sketching ideas for a new project. Something about mesh networks and disaster response systems. She didn't interrupt. Just sat in the chair across from me and waited. After 10 minutes, I looked up. Yes. I'm not here to prove anything, she said. I'm just here. Okay. I know I can't undo what happened. I know sorry isn't enough. But Daniel, I need you to know something. She met my eyes. I love you. Not because you built something impressive. Not because the world validated you. I love you because you're you. And I forgot that for a while. I forgot to see you as separate from my life. As your own person with your own thoughts and your own worth. I put my pen down. I got comfortable, she continued. Comfortable with you just being there. Being stable. Being content. And I stopped wondering what you were thinking because I assumed I already knew. She wiped her eyes. I was wrong. And I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm asking you to give me the chance to love you better. It was the most honest thing she'd said in years. I need you to understand something, I told her. I didn't build that system for revenge. I didn't hide it to hurt you. I did it because I needed to matter to myself again. Because somewhere along the way I stopped mattering to anyone else and that was killing me. I understand. Do you? Because if I stay, things have to be different. I have to matter before the world says I matter. My thoughts have to count before they're profitable. I have to be a partner again, not a retired guy you manage around. Yes, she said. All of that. Yes. We sat there in the study where I'd spent a year being invisible. Where I'd built something that changed my life. Where I'd learned that my value didn't depend on anyone's permission. And for the first time I thought maybe, just maybe, we could find our way back. But it would be on my terms now. Not theirs. 3 months later, I started teaching a class at the community college. Digital security. Twice a week. 15 students who actually wanted to learn what I knew. Clara came to my first lecture. Sat in the back. Didn't interrupt. Just listened. Afterwards she told me I was brilliant. Not because the world said so. Because she'd forgotten how good I was at explaining complex things simply. How patient I was with questions. How much I still had to give. My family changed too. Slowly. Not perfectly. But real. Evan hired me as a consultant. Paid me. Listened to my advice. Sometimes disagreed, which I respected more than blind agreement. We were colleagues now, not just father and son performing relationship. My daughter asked me to teach her coding. Not because it was trendy, but because she was curious about how I thought. We spent Saturday mornings working through problems, and she actually stayed present instead of checking her phone. Quinn visited twice. We didn't talk about my system or my success. We talked about his life, his struggles, his dreams. And when he asked for advice, it was because he valued my perspective, not because he felt obligated. Clara and I went to therapy. Learned how to talk again. How to see each other instead of assumptions. How to build a marriage where both people mattered equally. It wasn't easy. Some days I still felt the ache of those lonely mornings. Some days I wanted to remind them of what they'd cost me with their dismissal. But I chose different. I chose to build forward instead of staying stuck in resentment. Because here's what I learned sitting alone on New Year's Eve. Your value doesn't decrease based on someone's inability to see it. And waiting for validation from people who've stopped looking is the fastest way to disappear from your own life. I could have walked away from all of them. Part of me wanted to. But I chose to stay and demand better. To teach them how to value me by first valuing myself. To show them that respect isn't given because someone's impressive. It's given because someone's human and present and worthy of being heard. The tech company wanted me for another project. I said yes, but this time I told my family first. Showed them what I was working on. Invited them into my world instead of building it in secret. And they showed up. Not perfectly. But they tried. That's all any of us can do. Try. Choose better. Do the work to see the people we claim to love before the world tells us they matter. I'm not the same person who sat alone last New Year's. I'm not invisible anymore. Not because I was validated by strangers, but because I validated myself. Because I chose to matter regardless of who was paying attention. And that changed everything. Your value is inherent. Not earned. Not proven. Not dependent on anyone's recognition. It just is. And the moment you believe that, the moment you live like that's true, everything shifts. That's my truth. Hard won and worth every lonely morning. And I'm never going back to being furniture in my own life again. If this story hit you where it counts, I need you to do something for me. Subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications because we've got more stories coming that will challenge you, inspire you, and remind you of your worth. Drop a comment below and tell me your story. Have you ever felt invisible in your own family? Have you ever had to demand the respect you deserved? Your words might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. Let's build a community where people matter before the world validates them. Hit that subscribe button, turn on those notifications, and let's keep this conversation going. Your story matters. And I want to hear it.